Hello and welcome to the Columbus Metropolitan Club. I'm Kermit Whitfield, a member of the CMC Board of Trustees and Chief Strategy Officer for United Way of Central Ohio. It's great to see everyone here today. We have a very full room, and that's always great to see. Today's forum, The State of Downtown, is sponsored by the Robert Weiler Company, Barnes & Thornburg, Edwards Companies, and MS Consultants. Each are represented here by many friends and associates. Won't you please help me thank them? And welcome Bill Nolan, Office Managing Partner at Barnes & Thornburg, to the stage to introduce our speakers. Bill?
All right, thank you, Kermit. Delighted to be a very small part of this great panel. Was very excited when we saw this pop up and grabbed it up, and glad so many of you made it through what is an enormous amount of slush for a not very long storm. This is the third time that CMC has worked with the Capital, Crossroads, and Discovery Special Improvement Districts to present data and trends relevant to our downtown area, talk about what's going on, talk about the data behind it. With no further ado, let me introduce our speakers. Not present yet, but will make a grand entrance soon as Executive Director of the Special Improvement Districts, Cleve Ricksecker. Closest to me, going away, the President of the Columbus College of Art and Design, Melanie, the President of the Pizzuti Companies, Joel Pizzuti in the middle. Next, and I don't want to play favorites, but while President and Executive Director is a nice title, this is the best title, Placemaker and Street Disruptor at Kaufman Development, Jessica Mathews. And then all the way over is the Deputy Director of Research, Planning, and Facilities at the Special Improvement Districts. That is the longest title, Marc Conte. Marc's going to start off with a look at the data, and Marc, the floor is yours.
Thanks. Thank you, Bill. Thank you for the Columbus Metropolitan Club for hosting the forum again this year. It's an honor to be here, and thank you all for coming. There's not too many no-shows, which is wonderful. As Bill Nolan mentioned, I'm with the Capital, Crossroads, and Discovery Special Improvement Districts. These two districts were created in downtown by property owners to provide services in the public realm, including cleaning, safety, supplemental safety, beautification, promotions, and advocacy. If you have been downtown, I suspect you've seen our uniformed ambassadors out on the street. These folks are really passionate about downtown, and they work really hard every day to keep it clean and safe. And on a day like today, they are out there again. It's a very thankless job. They're out there clearing the crosswalks of all that slush, trying to get the sewer drains clear so that when you're walking downtown, you're not going through all that wet mush. One aspect of our program is homeless outreach. We employ 2 full-time homeless outreach specialists who are committed to engaging people who are in need on our downtown streets and getting them connected to services. The engagement takes place on the street, in our office, at the main library, and also at the open shelter. Our outreach team is very effective. Last year, they connected 84 people to permanent housing and 43 people to temporary housing. So if you see somebody who's downtown and appears to be in need of services, the best thing you could do is to give the SIDS hotline a call. And if you turn over your placemat on the other side of that, you'll see more detailed information about our homeless outreach and caring connections program. Putting this report together was a team effort in the office, so I do want to thank the rest of the SIDS staff over at this table for their work in putting it together. In most cases with the report and with what my remarks today will be about, I'll be talking about downtown with the official definition, referring to the area bounded by the 3 interstates, 670, 70, and 71, and then the railroad tracks to the west on the Sidon Peninsula. And it should come as no surprise that the state of downtown right now is very, very strong and remains strong. It's a wonderful situation when the report is pretty much outdated by the time we publish it, because so many projects have either been announced or have broken ground since the end of the year. I'll touch on just a couple of the downtown sectors that we track. First, looking at the housing market, downtown has had 15 years of consecutive population growth. I estimate the current downtown population to be 9,000 residents, with 600 residents added just in the last year. It's likely that downtown will pass the 10,000 resident threshold sometime in 2020. For comparison, though, downtown's population peaked at 30,000 in 1950, and it had dwindled to just 3,500 by the year 2000. So we've made some pretty amazing progress since then. There are 1,265 housing units under construction right now, and about 900 of these will open this year. Most of these units are rental. Close to 4,000 units have been announced, with many of these being contained in 2 long-term development projects, those being the Scioto Peninsula and then the Confluence Village, the area around the new Crew Stadium, which I guess maybe you'll hear more about that in a few weeks. The Discovery District, the eastern half of downtown and the focus of today's panel, is getting more attention now from residential developers. 134 units were completed this year, including new construction like 6th Street Mews, and some pretty high-profile adaptive reuse projects like the View on Grant and the Lear Block. These 3 projects are north of Broad near Columbus College of Art and Design and Columbus State Community College. Zander on State and the apartments at 330 Oak Street will reshape the area around Grant Medical Center. This area south of Broad will be further transformed with the proposals from the Pizzuti companies, you'll hear from Joel in a second, their proposals for the Grand Oak Apartments and a redevelopment of a surface parking lot near Capital University Law School. Motorist Insurance started construction on the first phase of what will be a new residential neighborhood around their corporate headquarters near the Topiary Park. Turning to the office market, the overall downtown vacancy rate reported by CB Richard Ellis is 14.9%. That's up from 13.3% a year ago. While more space is being leased than a year ago, new space was added to the market when 80 on the Commons was completed, causing the vacancy rate to increase slightly. Last year, I talked a little bit about the higher availability rate among the buildings around Capitol Square. The availability rate includes all of the vacant space plus leased space that is on the market or will be on the market fairly soon. This data can be found on your placemat in the lower left-hand corner. The availability rate for Capitol Square stands at 28% and still higher for the rest of downtown. A lot of the buildings around the square are trying to respond to this by staying competitive through new investment, and they're putting investment in tenant amenities and updates to their common areas. Some of these buildings, though, they've been labeled obsolete because of the small floor plates when compared to new construction. However, the buildings with the small floor plates hold an important role in attracting and incubating small businesses, especially in downtown. These small businesses may one day turn into large ones. Some examples just within the downtown proper. Root Insurance recently moved into 80 on the Commons and plans to expand their workforce by over 350 employees. Their previous space on Gay Street had a floor plate of just 5,400 square feet. Cover My Meds grew out of a small building on Chestnut and moved into Miranova and then leased some additional space in the Huntington Center. As they continue to grow, they are planning a new $240 million headquarters in Franklinton. Looking back at some of the corporate stalwarts of Columbus, Huntington Bank started in a small building, now has been since demolished, at Broad and High in 1866. And even Nationwide Insurance, they had to start somewhere. That somewhere was just a portion of a mansion on East Broad Street in the Discovery District. I'll close with a thought, though, about some additional meaning to the numbers. The development we are seeing throughout downtown from both the public and private sectors, it's a means to an end. The end is making downtown Columbus into the downtown that the city and region deserves. Downtown is truly a space for everyone, and it's the one place that creates an impression of who we are as a city for both residents and visitors. With that, I will turn it over to Cleve and the panel.
Thank you, Mark. When I look at what's happening in downtown, what strikes me, and the reason for the panel today, is the increasing amount of activity that's taking place in the Discovery District. Investment in this area of downtown is accelerating. What's interesting about the future of Discovery District, believe it or not, is the amount of surface parking and vacant land in this area of Columbus. And why is that? Well, parking lots and vacant properties are a clean slate. We don't know. We have no idea what Discovery District is going to look like in 10 or 20 years. Here to help us imagine the future of Discovery District is a great panel that understands the role that higher education, development, and public space will play in defining this place. But I'm going to start off by asking each of you to describe today's district and remind you that you're not members of a Discovery District Chamber of Commerce, and so you can be candid about how you would describe Discovery District today.
Is that for the panel?
That's for the panel.
Okay, good.
Can I call it the best neighborhood in downtown Columbus?
Yeah, that's fine.
It's a relatively immature neighborhood in terms of redevelopment, but it's one that has a great history. It's connected to some of the most important pieces of infrastructure in our city, obviously Broad Street, High Street, Grant, which is recently completed a bridge connecting back to German Village. When you go north, you look at CCAD and all the activity there. We've got cultural institutions, we've got office workers, we've got medical and Grant Hospital. There's a lot to work with in that neighborhood, and I think our challenge is how do we fill things in?
I think similar to the downtown, we're seeing kind of a resuscitation of sorts, where the downtown area and looking east and west, it's no longer a Monday through Friday work week place. It's slowly becoming a 24 hours a day life.
Yeah, I would agree with that as well. I think that from my perspective, sitting at Columbus College of Art and Design, the Discovery District is an exciting place to be, but I think, not as a member of the Chamber of Commerce of the Discovery District, it's got a lot of room to grow. So, right now, there are thousands of students at between CCAD and Columbus State, right next door, who are spending quite a bit of time in that area. Some of them are living in that area, but many of them feel like, they come here, they go to classes, maybe there's some amenities on their campuses, but beyond that, there's still not enough in the Discovery District itself to keep them there, happy in that 24/7 kind of way. And more of those students have no interest in hopping in a car going somewhere else. They don't want a car, they want to have everything right there. And so I think that's sort of where I feel like there's still some lack in the Discovery District. I think there are these amazing anchors between the educational institutions and the cultural institutions, and a lot of kind of empty spots in between that I can't wait to see what happens with them.
So,
Are there any other struggles that the neighborhood is facing?
well, I want to add to what Melanie was saying. That's where I think public space can be a real game changer. So the desire that I have with the Discovery District is to broaden people's views on how we define public space and how we use it. So thinking about public spaces, we commonly go to the beaches and malls and parks, libraries, and we don't necessarily think about our streets. And our streets are one of our city's greatest assets that is severely underutilized. So how do we chisel away at decades of the way that we've designed our streets and put together this marriage of life again, where you can move people and you can get your services from A to B, but you can also create life again in these streets, and that's what I like to do.
Any other struggles? For example, what's the impact of Broad Street?
Broad Street is terrific in that it can deliver people east and west throughout the city and drop them off in the Discovery District. It's a challenge because crossing it from the north side to the south side of the Discovery District is an impediment, and it doesn't feel that walkable and approachable. And I think one thing we need to do as a neighborhood in a district is figure out how we shrink those streets a little bit, make them more walkable, make them more comfortable. I'm sure Jessica has ideas about that. I think, certainly I do, and Melanie would as well. But that's a big challenge. We also there aren't services really in the neighborhood, and if we're going to have an 18 to 24-hour experience, we need retail, we need office, we need residential, we need entertainment. We need a balanced neighborhood like every other, whether the Short North, the German Village, the core of downtown, they're all trying to figure out how they create these balanced experiences.
When you talk about Broad Street, if we could detonate it, I would love to be the person to press that button and start again, because when you really talk about separation of neighborhoods and barriers, I mean, Broad Street is the quintessential street. No street in your downtown should ever be 80+ feet wide. I mean, that's going on freeway sizes. So if we can, have leadership and really start forward thinking about changing the way that Broad Street looks and feels, I think that really can start connecting multitude of neighborhoods, not just the Discovery District, but, we all know how far east and west Broad Street goes.
Yeah, I agree with that. I know, there's been a lot of talk amongst cultural institutions as well about really trying to rethink of Broad Street as a potential cultural corridor stretching from COSI to Franklin Park Conservatory with the museum and CCAD and the library and, many of our theaters and other, places in between. And I think that that takes a major reconsideration of how we use Broad Street. When I first moved here to Columbus from the Bay Area, I came out a couple months before my family and spent some time living in Airbnbs while I was looking for a house, and I spent about 4 weeks in a studio apartment right by the Deaf Park next to the library, and I have to say it was great, not just because I got to live the bachelor life for 4 weeks in a cool studio apartment, but I got to walk to work, and it was all wonderful. I loved walking around the park. Except crossing Broad Street, it wasn't the end of the world, but it was definitely an impediment. And I think that creating the community that we're all, I think, looking for in Discovery District will take some reconsideration of how we use our streets. I love the idea of thinking of our streets as public space and how we can occupy them in different ways.
Do you think that there are some positive things happening now in Discovery District, and what are you seeing, if there are?
I think there are. I think if we, it's a very big part of the community, but certainly the hospital growing and expanding and trying to improve things. You look at what the library did with their renovation of things. Look at the Deaf Park. Look at Cristo Rey. There are major pockets in the South Side coming into play. The infrastructure on Grant, I think, helps a lot. Going north, I know CCAD has been living through some serious infrastructure enhancements. I think all those things help, and there's more development occurring, so more people coming to the neighborhood will generate, hopefully, more thoughtful development and, more services.
Yeah, I agree. I think that, as Joel mentioned, we are sitting in the middle of some work that the city did called the Creative Campus, and it's fantastic. And it was a little painful to get through all that construction, but between Broad and Long, Cleveland, 9th Street, Washington, Gay Street, that whole little area there by CCAD and the museum now has these gorgeous streets that are these beautiful gray paver bricks, wonderful new landscaping, widened sidewalks with built-in benches. So it has, I think, begun some of that work to really create a street that is not only a hazardous place for pedestrians, but a place that people can hang out and spend time in and really enjoy that landscape. So that's one thing that's happened recently, and that work now in different ways is continuing up Cleveland into the Columbus State area in front of the new Mitchell Hall, their Culinary Arts and Hospitality building, which will be another great asset to the streetscape.
The Discovery Special Improvement District recently contracted with MS Consultants, MBBJ, UHS, and other subcontractors to create a Discovery Trail that's going to go through the district. What impact will a trail have on the district?
I think that what we're trying to do is make the Discovery District known to people. I mean, there's still a lot of people living in the city that don't know where the Discovery District is. So to begin to create interesting, memorable spaces, create this very interesting trail, I think that, people can come to it and experience it and have these great experiences and be able to then become these ambassadors of talking about the Discovery District.
I mean, will it help synergy? Right now, the problem in the Discovery District is that people go to an attraction, whatever it might be, the hospital, the library, the museum, they park, they go, they get back in their cars, they leave. That's a challenge. Can we overcome that?
I think what you're doing, I think the trail helps. I think that what every neighborhood wants is people to park their car and walk around and enjoy themselves and move from activity to activity. So if they're living there, we'd like to see people on the streets, walking to a restaurant, walking to a bar, walking the trail, whatever it is. We'd like to see people visiting a neighborhood doing the same thing. If we aren't giving them experiences like the trail and others, they won't do that.
Yeah, I agree. I think in some ways it will also help us become tourists in our own city. I think for many of us, you live in a city for a long time and you go elsewhere to experience something new when there are so many parts of our own city that we don't ever really take advantage of. So I think something like the Discovery Trail gives people an excuse to come check out a new neighborhood they may not know, gives them a roadmap on how to do that, on where to go, what to see. So I think that'll be a great advantage of it. And I think, again, selfishly for CCAD, it will also, I think, help people recognize CCAD as a place to come visit. I think, most of us maybe don't think about a college campus as some place to go visit. You think that's where the students go who attend there. But, most college campuses and places like CCAD have all kinds of great assets for the community. We have a cafeteria that's open to the public. We have public galleries. We have, a store that's open to the public, an art store. We have all kinds of things. And I think that, again, giving people that visual designation of a place gives them sort of access in a way that they maybe didn't know they had before.
I think what's great also about the Discovery Trail is we have the potential of really doing some special things when it comes to creating a more robust public realm. I think sometimes we miss the boat on that, and when it comes to the public realm, that's kind of the veranda of our cities. That's what seduces people to neighborhoods. So the Discovery Trail could be, a game changer for getting people to come into the district, getting businesses to come into the district, and just general increase of life in that neighborhood.
Is Discovery District unique for the city of Columbus? And if you think it is, why do you think it's unique?
I think it is because it has some permanent fixtures in Columbus State, CCAD, it's part of the CBD, Capitol Law School, the library. It has all these iconic parts of our community that are already in it. A lot of neighborhoods today are trying to find those. They're trying to maybe embrace what they have and build on it or attract it themselves, and the Discovery District has them in place. So there's a lot more to work with, if you will. There's a lot more momentum if people recognize it and I think try to build on it.
Agreed.
Well, I think what I like what Joel just said was, we are, with the resuscitation of these neighborhoods happening, what we're trying to do is create complete communities. And we have all of these bits and pieces in the Discovery District that help create these complete communities. And I think that as we continue to, as we continue to build and as we continue to enhance the public realm, then those gaps can continue to fill in where people can truly live a full life in the downtown area.
Are there any neighborhoods in any other cities that you think would be or could serve as an inspiration for Discovery District?
Yes, lots.
And what are they?
Well, the neighborhoods, the U.S. cities, because people get mad about Europe. The U.S. cities that I really enjoy are, your Back Bays in Boston and the Hayes Valleys and the Missions in San Francisco and Venice. And these are all places that are full of exploration, and the street design and the streetscape is thoughtful about people. So their street hierarchy is people are greater than cars. And I think that's really telling about why people flock to these cities, and love them. And I don't want to continue saying, I love this city because, I want to say that about Columbus. So that's why I do what I do.
I can't give a better answer. I'm going to stick with her.
Yeah, I mean, one neighborhood that I would add to that list is in Oakland, California. I spent about 13 years living in Oakland, and one of the great neighborhoods in Oakland, there are many, but one is the Temescal area. It's right by a BART station, so the rapid transit in the Bay Area, so you can get easily over to San Francisco if you really want to go over to San Francisco. There is great housing that's being built up right by the BART station, so that you don't have to have a car. I think there's maybe one parking garage at the BART station. Other than that, can't remember a parking garage anywhere in that neighborhood. There are amazing restaurants and shops. It is, it's walkable, and it's a very mixed income neighborhood as well. So I think, to me, that's another neighborhood that has done a good job of building up around public transportation, being very bike and pedestrian focused, creating great living experiences for those who are there in terms of the amenities, and also, acknowledging the history in that area. So, many histories, but one that comes to mind is, sort of walking tours that you can do through those neighborhoods that include, sort of historic Black Panther sites and, really interesting aspects that sort of speak to the community. So that's another great neighborhood that I would point to.
In a few minutes, we'll move to audience questions. And so start thinking of what those might be, and if you want to ask a question, begin to queue up to the microphone that's stage left. But I have a final question. I want each of you to answer this question, and take your time to think about the question as you verbalize it, and that is, imagine a fully built-out Discovery District in 15 years. Now, remember, I think each of the tables has an aerial shot of Discovery District, just showing the amount of open space. Is that right, Mark? Did we distribute those? I mean, there's a phenomenal amount of open space, parking lots, vacant lots, and so the Discovery District can be anything, really, anything in 10 to 20 years. So walk us through, each of you walk us through what you imagine this place looks like and feels like in 15 years.
Let me go first.
Joel, I think you look like you've got a thought.
Well, we think about this stuff a lot. Going back to something we talked about earlier, there's a lot to work with in this neighborhood. There aren't a lot of neighborhoods that have healthcare, culture, education, some entertainment, some places to live. There's a lot going for the community. So if we looked out, the reason we're developing in the Discovery District and have some projects we're going to start this year and looking at other investments is because we believe in 15 years, if we could look out and see Columbus State, CCAD, the museum, all of those cultural and educational pieces, Capitol Law School, the library, you look at all of those, if we have development clustered around them, and there are people taking advantage of that cultural and educational experience, that creates a lot of vibrancy for the neighborhood. When you look at Grant Hospital and some of the infrastructure and things moving south all the way down to where Nationwide Children's Hospital is on Livingston. I know that's not the Discovery District, but that all impacts what we're doing. It kind of bookends the neighborhood. I think, if we could see Livingston improve, I think that'll encourage people to continue to move north. I think if we see people living and working around all of our cultural and educational institutions, if we see Town Street, there are so many great apartments and buildings that line Town Street right around the topiary garden. We start seeing those older buildings revamped and improved, if we see some of the parking lots built out and people enjoying that neighborhood, I think we have a chance to be one of the best neighborhoods in all of Columbus.
Do you imagine any high-rise residential?
I think close to Broad Street, and maybe even on Broad Street. There are some parking lots on Broad Street. There are some, buildings that maybe have a higher and better use sitting on a current site today. Yeah, I do. I could see that. I could even see some office. Some of those older buildings, the vacancy rate is certainly higher around the square, but some of that is the functional obsolescence of those buildings. It's, I think if, we could create a great community and bring office and retail and residential back to that area, I think you'd see people, increase the business population in the district.
Do you want to go? Go ahead.
Sorry, that's a long
I envision, so if you look at those maps, you can see that it's very, very concrete heavy. So I'm a big proponent of the importance of green spaces. So, I would love to see, and I think that the neighborhood has a great opportunity to really set a precedence for green space. So as we become more dense, the more important it's going to become that we have these green spaces for people, for, restorative measures and stress relief, and as a shared space. I see a lot of opportunity for green space. I see slower streets because when it comes down to it, it's really about how you feel. I would love to see a mix of like incubator businesses where all different types of people have the availability to try out their own business. Yeah.
Yeah, I agree with all that. I think when I look at those aerial photos and others, if you look toward downtown from the top of Motorist, for example, that sea of concrete and parking is tragic. And I feel like all of those parking lots, maybe I'm not the data scientist when it comes to parking, but maybe a quarter of them need to be converted into parking garages, and the rest of them could be turned into green space, new buildings. I think that Discovery District could be a real sort of hallmark kind of flagship district when it comes to looking at smart mobility options, being part of downtown, having more amenities there, serving as a place where people really can get around on foot, by bike, by smart vehicle when they need to. I think that is what I see as the future. And then the other thing I would say is that because arts and education are so central to Discovery District, I think that there's the capacity in Discovery District, given all of that land and the still relative inexpensiveness of much of it, to say that Discovery District has an opportunity to become a design-centric, creative-centric opportunity space for entrepreneurs and others. So I would love to see more of that, really taking advantage of, again, the assets that are in Discovery District already, and to see people kind of creating a real hub there in the Discovery District for a lot of the work that's already starting to grow in Columbus and Central Ohio more generally.
Okay. It's now time for audience questions. Please state your name and ask your question. Avoid editorial comments. And remember, questions end with a question mark. So identify yourself and please ask a question.
Hi, I'm Mark Allen, Mark Allen Editorial. I am a freelance copy editor, an independent copy editor, and my national organization is coming here in 2023. We're planning way out. So 700 of my friends are going to come to town, and they're going to be at the Hyatt, and so they're going to have access to the Short North, and I can tell them how to get to German Village pretty easily. Some of them are going to ask me, how do I get to the art museum? Maybe somebody's heard of the Topiary Garden and wants to check out that. And I'm not sure, in terms of transportation, we do the north and south really well, but how do they get to the Discovery District? And how do they, obviously without walking, is there any thought about bringing people from certain areas to other areas without without having access to a car.
We should have invited someone from the city to this panel, but I don't know of any, but go ahead.
Can you ask your question again? I wasn't able to hear it fully.
My question is about transportation,
Right.
about getting from, for instance, the Short North area to the Discovery District.
Right.
We do, there's the C bus that goes up and down High Street. We can get all the way to German Village, but how do you get to the Discovery District when you don't have access to a car? Without walking, obviously.
I will say currently, the Broad Street bus runs every 10 minutes. I mean, it's a very good service. Now, you have to transfer. I will grant you that. But the transit service in town is actually quite good.
So two things. I mean, from the Short North to the Discovery District, it's not too far of a walk. Be mindful of people's abilities to be able to walk. Also, we do have bike stations that people can hop on and take from A to B. There's a number of Kogo bike shares where you can hop on and off. Again, dependent upon people's love or fear of riding in the roads or not. But those are options.
Actually, if Smart Columbus were up here, they might be able to answer that question as well in 2023.
Buried in the question is a little bit of editorializing. Maybe we should be thinking about circulator options. Smart Columbus probably does have some good ideas about how we move people east and west and not just along those straight up and down routes.
Agreed.
Agreed.
Thank you for coming. This was a really informative forum. I was so happy to hear you talk about green spaces, and like you, I enjoy the cities that have the pocket parks, the downtown pocket parks within the density, and not just a central park. Places you can walk out of a building and there's an open space and you see guys playing checkers and those kind of things. Does our city have any ordinances in place that require that as we build density?
To my knowledge, we do not. It's really up to a developer to decide to do that. I mean, I can only speak for how we approach it. We try to include some kind of outdoor space, some kind of green space. We try to include public art in our projects. We try to do things that we think reach into the community, don't just pull out of it. But I think it's largely up to the private sector to decide to do that. The city oftentimes, I see Marc Conte here. We've had many wonderful discussions over the years about public space. And I think there's a push-pull sometimes with the city, and I think the two groups, the public sector and the private sector, need to work together to figure out ways to make it a part of our developments.
I think it's also community members like myself that are very much interested in, again, showing people what could be by, taking parking spaces and transforming them, right? And showing people that the world isn't going to fall if you take away a couple of parking spaces, and show people the life that can happen in one space, for example. I think there's opportunity to do that. I think that other cities have really great, robust programs that allow communities to apply to do these things. We currently don't, but I think community members play a heavy role in that as well.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Good afternoon. Tim Gerber, Professor Emeritus in the School of Music at Ohio State and former Secretary of the University Senate. Live close to the university and had the privilege of sending our two daughters to the Columbus City Schools. I'm just curious about the number of schools, K through 12, public or private, in the Discovery District, and whether their presence factors into the planning for the future of the district. Thank you.
Well, there are
No, please.
There are two schools actually currently. Fort Hays, of course, is in the very northern part of Discovery. And then there's an incredibly wonderful school. Cristo Rey is located next to Topiary Park. But in terms of typical public schools, elementary schools, for example, I'm not aware of any that are located in Discovery.
But it's a great question because
Sorry?
Metro School downtown.
Oh, Metro Downtown, thank you. Yes, you're right. They have some facilities, they use part of the Franklin University campus.
It's a great question, though, and we need more of it. One of the challenges for downtown is, how can families educate their kids? My wife and I live in German Village. We have a young daughter. Does she go to school downtown? What does she do? I think anyone with children, anyone with a family would think about that, and it's important for the growth of the community that we have it.
I know many families that lived in the urban area of downtown core that have had to move away to suburbs because they needed to take their kids and get them to their elementary schools, and it's unfortunate that they love their area that they lived in urban, but they have to go to these other areas for a certain amount of years for schooling.
I just have one editorial comment to make. I raised 3 kids in the Columbus City schools. They had a fabulous experience. There are great schools that are available to people. You may have to work a bit to find a school that works for your kid, but I will say that the Columbus City schools have some very, very good schools.
Wasn't implying they don't.
Nope. Oh, no, I wasn't. I was aiming mine at Jess, not you.
All right.
Yeah.
Hi, I'm Trip Lazarus. I'm just wondering how we do a better job of getting auxiliary businesses down there. I mean, even looking right now around, we've got all these, housing around the commons, but try to go to the theater, which is right there, and try to find a restaurant that's right there. Or if I'm living in any of those places, I would consider it a lot more likely if there were a little grocery that I could stop in and pick stuff up on my way home. I know there's a Kroger, but I probably have to get on a bus to get to that. So I'm a little worried about how slow we are to fill in needed businesses.
Speak for the development, at least us as a developer. We are as well. All the cities that were referenced by Jessica and by Jesse and by Melanie, they all have balanced communities. In any great city, downtown I've ever been to, anywhere in the world, there's a balance. People can shop, they can buy groceries, they can, do simple things, go to the drugstore, go to the dry cleaner. Like, we need all those things downtown. That's what makes cities or communities complete. It is a challenge. The one everyone always hears about is the grocery store, and we think the same thing you do. It's not for lack of effort. Rooftops and retail have a direct correlation. So,
Let me have a follow-up question to your question, though. When you build on-site parking for residential projects in downtown, and everyone who lives downtown has a car, why would they shop in downtown when they can drive to a big box store?
I think they want to.
Right.
I mean, I again speak for myself. I mean, we live in an urban community downtown and have no interest in driving to the suburbs to go shopping. We would like to do everything downtown.
Just because I have a car doesn't mean I like to drive it all the time.
But I do think it's also about trying to kind of figure out what can be distinctive about that shopping experience. So yes, maybe it would be just as easy to drive 15 minutes out to, the big box store as it would be to have to go to 5 different stores. But going to those 5 different stores on your block has to become an enjoyable experience. And I think that's part of what the challenge is as well, is that we have to really think about what kind of retail is going in, what kind of food is going in. Are those places that are meeting a specific desire and need of that community? Are they positive? Are they exciting experiences, especially younger folks? If they are going to go to a store and not shop online, it's not about the big box store, it's about Amazon. But if they are going to go to a store, it's because it's an enjoyable experience and because they can maybe get some unique local goods that they can't get elsewhere. So I think being very deliberate about what we put there, I think will be really key. But I agree, I think it is a challenge. I mean, again, having CCAD has about 450 students living on campus at the college and 2 residence halls. And, you know, they're thankful that there's a Jimmy John's and a Domino's down the street, and, but it would be nice if there were some other options as well. You know, we're lucky that we do have the Hills Market, you know, right again down the street, but it'd be great. I know that not everyone can afford to do all of their grocery shopping at Hills Market. So I think it's about sort of, again, a diversity, and I think it's essential to really getting Discovery District to be what we want it to be, what we envision it to be in 15 years, does rely on you know, figuring out how to speed along the retail and grocery to go along with the denser residencies.
But Melanie, if I may follow up on that comment with a question, the spending more at Hills Market is actually a bargain if you're not paying for a car. And so my point is simply that as long as we are an auto-oriented downtown, which we still are, retail is going to suffer because, yes, it does cost more to go to a store that's within walking distance because it's a smaller store. It's more expensive to do the retailing. But without a car, without paying $600 a month for a car, all of a sudden that loaf of bread at Hills Market, which is 50 cents more, is a bargain.
Yeah, no, I agree. And so, I mean, I do think, you know, a lot of specialty stores and, again, buying local, yes, it may be slightly more expensive, but I think it's a matter of factoring in all of those things about the cost of transportation, about the, you know, maybe not with groceries so much. You don't want your loaf of bread to last that long, but, you know, with other goods, it's about sort of how long you will keep them and enjoy them, and, you know, moving away from the, you know, sort of fast fashion world of disposable, you know, apparel. I think it's all, yeah, all definitely wrapped up into that, into looking at the whole cost. But that's also a conversation we need to have more of. That's not necessarily obvious and intuitive to everybody, you know, so I think we need to have that conversation in a much more deliberate way in terms of how we communicate price and value.
Howdy, I'm Brian McCann, and I was one of the original board members of the Discovery District. I also followed Cleve as executive director of the Capital City Transit Coalition. And I guess my question is going to be directed to Jess mostly, but do any of you remember a study done about 97, 98 or so about a median down the middle of Broad Street? And if so, would that be a disruptor enough to make Broad Street palatable or pleasant?
Depends on how big that median is, because we have medians on streets that don't do anything. So I think that you need a median where people are crossing the street and they can actually feel like they can stop in the median and be comfortable waiting for the next light for them to cross, right? I think that's a really great step to take that street apart and have some sort of a green space down the middle and begin to separate and reduce those lanes.
And that was similar to the thinking we had at the time, was to
Correct.
break up that crossing.
I would concur. I think though I wasn't here in '97 for that study, I've heard of it, and I think I know that there are people still interested in that idea of having a true sort of boulevard with a pedestrian and biking, green space median down the middle of Broad, couple that with, again, a, circulator stopping at, arts institutions along Broad, and I think you've made a real difference.
I wouldn't necessarily compare Broad Street to Park Avenue in New York, but we could learn something from the way they handle their infrastructure. There is that median that allows people to stop when they're crossing from one side to the other. It's also planted beautifully. They'll do art installations. All of the infrastructure is seamless, continuous, and consistent, and I think that would shrink the street. It would slow down traffic and make it much more comfortable for people to walk from the north side of the city to the south side.
And Brian, I just want to add that that's something that could happen sooner than later. And what I mean by that is we can experiment. So you don't necessarily need heavy equipment and this complex reconstruction and multi-million dollars. What I do and what I love is you take paint and you take signage and you take, barricades, and you put it out into the street and you get people to react and feel it out. And does it work? No. Does it work? Yes or no, right? I mean, getting it out there sooner than later is what is the game changer, as opposed to just talking about it and having a plan and it's sitting on the shelf. And, I'm really interested to see what happens when Broad Street ramps close. Are we going to look at Broad Street in a whole other way?
Kermit, I turn it back over to you.
Thank you. Well, I hope you enjoyed today's forum. I know I sure did. It sounds like there's a tremendous amount of opportunity moving forward in the Discovery District, and we just scratched the surface of it today. Let's thank our sponsors, Robert Weiler Company, Edwards Companies, MS Consultants, and Barnes & Thornburg. And our speakers, Cleve Ricksecker, Melanie Korn, Jessica Mathews, Joel Pizzuti, and Marc Conte. And thanks to all of you. We'll see you here next week.